Welcome to the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. Our theme for 2025 is the future of work. Meaning is the new money. In a world shaped by rapid innovation and constant change, the pursuit of purpose and impact has never been more important. I'm Dr. John Dentico, your host, bringing over 30 years of experience in leadership, strategic thinking, and purpose-driven innovation. Here, we tackle the pressing challenges of our time, from the rise of artificial intelligence to the growing need for meaning in the workplace. Together, we'll uncover how leaders can ethically integrate AI to enhance decision-making and keep humanity at the heart of their organizations. Remember, amidst all the technological advancements, in the end, it's always about the people. This podcast is your resource for actionable tools, thought-provoking discussions, and inspiring stories. It's time to go beyond leadership development and focus on leadership impact, creating workplaces where people thrive, innovation flourishes, and meaning truly becomes the new currency. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Now, let's throttle up and dive into today's episode. Hello and welcome to the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. It's me, Dr. John Dentico. With me today is Sean Boyle, a serial entrepreneur, digital marketing expert, and the driving force behind Momentum360, a seven-figure agency helping businesses across the country level up their marketing with high impact, high return on investment strategies. Sean is also the host of the Sean Boyle Podcast, where he dives deep into entrepreneurship, investing, and lifestyle with some of today's top thinkers and doers. A Philadelphia native with a Penn State degree in advertising and a lifelong love of entrepreneurship, Sean built his first ventures as a kid running lemonade stands. Fast forward to today, and he's helping small businesses generate 3 to 10 times returns through virtual tours, SEO, web development, and digital strategy. When he's not building up companies, you'll find him training in Jujitsu, reading self-improvement books, or discovering Philly's best restaurants. Sean joins us to talk about growth, grit, and what it takes to turn vision into momentum. I'm truly pleased that he's here with me this morning. Good morning, Sean. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Dr. John, thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure. What an intro, by the way. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. You can send it to your best friends. How do you like that? It's great.
I love
And
that.
oh, by the way, just call me John. I appreciate that very much. I very appreciate the doctor thing, but John just works for me fine. So, Sean, let me ask you this question. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up? And what were some of the influences in your life?
Probably had too many influences, good and bad, John, but I'll just talk about the good. Grew up just outside of Philadelphia in this small town called White Marsh. Pretty middle-class family, I would say. Mom was an occupational therapist. Dad was an entrepreneur. It really wasn't until the end of high school that I actually started to really get into my entrepreneurial spirit, which we can talk about in a second. My father, and I like to tell this story, it's kind of an ominous story, but it's the story that kicks everything off. My father actually went to prison when I was a senior in high school, or at least he was indicted by the federal government. Out of necessity, I needed to become something to provide for the family. I really wanted to take that next step forward. Before that, I was the typical kid going out on the weekends, having fun. It never sunk in the potential I had until my back was against the wall, so we can get into that. But that was my upbringing. Went to Penn State, graduated in 2020 during COVID. Very interesting time to graduate, which we can get into as well. I'm a Christian man. I firmly believe in my religion, and that's really been keeping me sane over the 28 years of my life so far. So it's been a pretty wild ride, I would say.
Yeah, very interesting. I've had 3 guests on who all went to prison. And
Wow.
today they lead multi-million-dollar businesses. I had one guest, Ken Miller, who went to prison 3 times. Told me that it took the first 2 times didn't stick. And now he's an AI entrepreneur, a wonderful guy, incredible. I just wrote a book called Becoming Ken. So there are ways back from those kinds of things that happen in people's lives. Anyway, we'll move on a little bit. Let me ask you this question. You've built Momentum360 into a 7-figure agency What was the original pain point you set out to solve? And how has that evolved over time?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it really was a perfect storm, John, because when I graduated Penn State, that's really when we started the business. I didn't have to deal with school, monotonous homework, this, that, and the third, so I could really focus on the business. And what was interesting is that's when COVID was in the midst of everything. People were masking up and gloves, the whole thing. There was so much demand with the virtual tours. So the problem we were really trying to solve was, hey, if there's a real estate property out here, other than photos and maybe a video, what's a very immersive way where people can check these properties out? And think of a restaurant, a music venue. If people are trying to rent these things out for whatever creative reason, what's a good marketing tool to do that? So that's ultimately the first problem we wanted to solve. And then the next question becomes, once we solve this problem, there's another problem that happens, right? Where are we going to put this? We're going to put it on the website. Well, you could probably use a couple new pages on the website, or we're going to post it on social media. You kind of need new videos on the social media. So the virtual tour side of the business was the origin of the overarching marketing strategies that we employ today. It's social media, SEO, advertising, what have you.
Yeah, I can understand that. I've had guests on, and I'm talking to an organization right now where they tell me, and this is just more from a generic perspective, right? We don't have a plan. We don't have a plan. So if you don't have a plan, you obviously don't have a strategy. And if you don't have a strategy, you don't have a mission. And that's kind of the magic three there. Let me add execution at the end. How do you get it done? Which I think is important. So those to me are the golden four. I find it so interesting that people are so into the tactics, the shiny new thing, as I like to say, that they forget about, like, I had a guest on just recently, and we talked about the tactics and not having a strategy that drives everything. So I completely understand where you're coming from and the importance of all those different ideas. Let me ask you this question, if I can. Entrepreneurship has been part of your story since lemonade stand days. What early lessons still influence how you lead today?
That's so great. There was one person in particular, I'll tell this story. I don't think I've told this story on a podcast before, but it really shaped my customer service background, because I think the one thing that I emphasize on is customer service and customer forward thinking within my company. So I'll tell you the quick stories. I don't know, it's probably 7 or 8. It's one of my earliest memories. I'm a kid making lemonade, put the lemonade, put the sugar, the whole bit. And who's going to say the lemonade that I made is bad, right? No one's going to say it's bad. People are going to kiss my butt. I'm a kid, right? However, there was one neighbor who said, Sean, I'm going to be honest with you. Do you want to be a business owner? And I'm like, oh yeah, I want to be a business owner. I want to be an entrepreneur. He's like, well, listen, I'm going to tell you the truth. He was an entrepreneur himself. And he said, the lemonade's not as good as you can make it. And to me, I was crushed. I was like, oh my God, you're telling me my lemonade sucks? Like, I'm a kid. I just wanted to cry. I was like, oh my gosh, people are telling me this is great. The first person telling me it's not. And he was right though, because, okay, maybe I needed to add a little bit more sugar, maybe a little bit more, whatever the case was, to make the perfect lemonade. That taught me, and it's always been a message and a driving force behind just serving the customer, having a great service and product. You want to get that feedback from customers. You want to implement that stuff. Simply say to yourself, hey, how can I make my product better? That neighbor was helping me. I would be remiss if that neighbor didn't share their feedback, because I probably would have grown up a little bit differently, maybe had a little bit more of an ego and, oh, my stuff is great. I would have maybe had a little bit of an inflated ego there. But the fact that he was able to humble me, and what was funny is he actually is an entrepreneur himself. And the fact that he was able to share that, well, it's not just for lemonade, but you can use that for a lot of avenues in life. So I think that was one of the biggest things when I was a kid that I learned as an early entrepreneur, for sure.
Customer service is where it's at. How do you keep the customer happy? Even if your initial work is disappointing to them, how do you come back and satisfy that? How do you come back and rescue? That is such a game changer for so many people, because someone may walk away and say, well, that was a disappointing experience, but what? Sean came back or John came back and fixed it and made sure I was happy. And I'll go back to that guy. I'll go back there, because I know that if there's any issue or any problem, they'll fix it. And then today, many times you're just left to your own devices after the initial contract or the initial work. So over and over again, we hear the same thing. Service matters. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate the lemonade stand story as well. Let me ask you this. Momentum offers everything from virtual tours to search engine optimization. What's one digital marketing mistake that you see small businesses make again and again?
It's a great question. If I had to consolidate it to a single problem, I think it's really boils down to like typical service-based businesses, which is the companies that we work with, right? They don't have a good understanding of how to rank on Google. I think that's the biggest thing a small business owner, a service-based business owner can do. And I'll give you an example of that. Let's just say you have a plumbing company, John's Plumbing. If you don't know how to rank high on Google with blog pages, with your Google business profile, with YouTube videos, or perhaps a podcast like we're doing right now, Sean's Plumbing, to make an example, if I know how to rank higher, if people Google, if we're in the Philadelphia area, plumbing services in Philadelphia, plumbing services near me, I'm going to get the majority of traffic. So many people just don't utilize Google, YouTube, these information tools that we have at our disposal, ChatGPT, another one, to actually understand the fundamental ways to rank high on Google. So there's a lot of ways that you can rank on Google, and maybe we can get into it, but that's the fundamental issue I see. It doesn't matter if you're dancing on TikTok, that's not going to get you customers. If you're spending a lot on ad dollars, the core fundamental thing is, are you showing up high on Google organically when someone Googles your services in your area? I think that's a huge opportunity, and not a lot of business owners really get it, which is kind of unfortunate, which is why they come to us and a lot of other marketing companies. When they're trying to save a couple of dollars, a lot of times they can just learn it for themselves and do it for themselves and grow their business.
Well, let's ask this question because you brought it up. I want to talk a little bit about Google. There is this, it's happening now with the advent of artificial intelligence, the acceptance of AI. In many cases, I do it myself. ChatGPT is replacing, if you will, a basic Google search. So instead of going to Google to search, right, you go to ChatGPT and say, find me plumbing services in my area, that kind of thing. How do those things integrate on the Google search listing, if you will? So so now if I'm searching in ChatGPT, how does the interplay between ChatGPT and Google matter to search engine optimization?
Yeah, that's an interesting one for sure. And it's funny because I myself am thinking the same thing. Like I am now going to ChatGPT recreationally, like to search like a bunch of, I'm a big golfer and martial artist, so I do a lot of searches for that. But what ends up happening, John, is people, when they Google ChatGPT, they're not just finding articles on Google, they're finding articles on LinkedIn, they're finding articles on Bing, all these other searches. So ChatGPT is essentially using, if you have ChatGPT right here, people who are watching video kind of at the top, and then at the bottom, you have all these other distribution lists of Google, Bing, Yahoo, etc. That's really what ChatGPT is pulling at. It's kind of a race to the top, right? Because if Google's AI can then trump ChatGPT's AI, then people are going to go back to Google. There is a little bit more competition in regards to searches, which is why SEO AI is so important now. If you can actually rank high on ChatGPT, that's invaluable now because that's ultimately going to be the new norm, if you will. So there's a lot of similarities. I don't think Google's really going anywhere. I would be interested to see how Advent and how their AI turns out. I mean, they're $1 trillion company valuation. Like they're one of the biggest companies, if not the biggest in the world. I have full confidence in them. I think they're going to do their thing, but do I think they have a superior product to ChatGPT and just the quick and easy fundamental search that they can provide? No, I don't. I think ChatGPT right now holds the crown in that for sure.
So very interesting. Yeah, I can see it. When I use ChatGPT, that's where I have my account that I get a great deal of support from mapping out different strategies, if you will, leadership strategies and different things like that, and asking it certain questions. It's a very interesting mix here. It's changing in so many ways with the acceptance of AI. I think I made this observation, and I'll mention it to you. I remember when computers first came online, back in the early 80s, when browsers were just coming. Wow, you could see a picture on your computer screen, on your CRT? How fabulous is that? You mean it's just not text anymore? Okay, so I remember that time. In those days, people were the constant and computers were the variable. Okay, depending on how someone used computers, whether they were spreadsheets, text, whatever it was, the computer became the variable and the person was the constant. But now that's changed because computers are ubiquitous. They're everywhere. So now computers are the constant. People are the variable, depending on how a person wants to use it, how they want to assemble search engine optimization for their particular product or service, for example. I believe that's exactly what we're going to go through in the next 5 years. Today, people are the constant. AI is the variable. But in a much quicker time, in 5 years, AI will become the constant and people will become the variable. How people choose to use AI and bring it into their life and do different things. It's a different twist on the way people perceive AI to be right now. Wait till it's distributed en masse, whether it's Copilot, ChatGPT, whether it's Perplexity, Grok, whatever, Google system, which escapes me right now, I'm sorry. But all these things are going to become ubiquitous. And then the question is, will people be able to be the distinguishing factor in the future? I'd love to get any reflection you have on that idea.
I think that's probably, I've talked to a lot of AI people, John. I think that's probably the best. I haven't heard a better description of AI with constants and variables. I couldn't summarize that better myself if I tried. You could write a thesis just based off that premise of constant and variables. I really like that terminology. Well, I'll say this. Movies aside, AI aside, robots taking over the world aside, I think I have a very optimistic view of how AI is going to improve our lives. I think humans are still going to be the driving force behind how we use it. AI is just going to be the instrument. We're still going to be the artist, and then maybe the AI can be a saxophone or what have you if you're more of a violin player, piano. But you can make bad music or you can make good music. It just depends on the kind of music you want. I think it really lies in the purpose of the human being, of what they ultimately want that fundamental use to be, for good or for bad. You look at people from history, the most evil people to the most divine people, and they've had a purpose. And it's very interesting to see if they were alive now, how they would use it for good or for bad. And there's a lot of conversations around how it's going to be leveraged, how it's going to be used, how do we keep it safe. But I always go back to this fundamental thing that the human brain, even though AI, there's a lot of opinions out there, and I'd love to hear yours. I'm like, okay, AI is going to be smarter than the human brain. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think human brains came up with AI, and that whole premise and whole idea, it's yet to be seen. But I feel like we're always going to be the driving force behind that. I mean, we can have a podcast in and of itself on just this whole conversation, but yeah, it's a very interesting one, to say the least.
Yeah, one of my themes this year is meaning is the new money. People are searching, especially the Gen Zers and people and the millennials, they're looking for a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose in their lives. Yet there is this feeling that AI and the technology it brings is going to run people over. It's almost like getting run over by a bus. It's coming at you and there's nothing you can do. And the answer is, I agree with you. At the end, it's always about the people. And I think how people choose to use it. Will there be nefarious issues that people have to face? Absolutely. There's going to be a lot of good that comes from it. A lot of wonderful good, I believe in my heart, that will come from it. People will find good ways to use it. Things like in the medical field, farming, for example. One thing that because I'm a veteran, that I look at is how it will be used in military decision-making. Quick reaction military decision-making. You're under attack. Now what do you do? So it's going to be very interesting to see where it goes. But I agree with you. I think in the end, it's always going to be about us, how we choose to use it, how we choose to use it to defeat the evil in the world, because there's evil in the world. There's evil. And how we choose to use it to do that. So I think it will, in the end, hopefully with a greater level of it, do good things for all of us. And I appreciate
Amen.
your comments. Let me ask you this. You've built your agency on performance and return on investment. How do you approach showing real measurable value to your clients?
Yeah. It's a question I love to answer, John, to be honest. Specifically with the virtual tours, that was our benchmark of conversions and ROI. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking. I think the one thing I really tried to do when I started out with Momentum360 is make something different, because there's a lot of companies during COVID that did what we did. They made virtual tours for residential, commercial, industrial real estate, for schools, education centers, hospitals, and what have you. Anything with a physical space could be captured in 360. The one thing I wanted to do was, okay, this looks great. It's very posh. It has music. It looks cool. But are people using this? Are people converting off of this? What I wanted to do was actually, and I can kind of say this now, you can let the cat out of the bag, but I wanted to keep this under wraps in 2020, is what I would do is I would go to my competition. I would essentially say, hey, show me a virtual tour, like asking if I'm a prospective client. How do they get leads from this? How do they actually use this? And they would show me this way. Oh, they're supposed to go to the website, but there was no conversion tracking set up. There was no clear marketing path to actually showing them value. So what I wanted to do was make something that was a shiny object, was very posh, but also had the conversion value behind it. So people were actually seeing ROI. Medical centers were getting more patients, schools were getting more students, etc. Houses were being sold faster. The majority of people during COVID were doing two things. They were calling and filling out forms on the virtual tour. So what I ended up doing was I got rid of all the busy noise, the music, the tags, and I just focused on having people call if they're interested and having people fill out a form if they're interested. And then I would use Google Analytics on the back end to track that data. So if you're my client, John, after we do the virtual tour, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months down the road, I will send you a report on the analytics and say, here's what we were able to generate. Clients not only enjoyed the virtual tour aesthetically, but they said, we're actually seeing a result on this. Like, we're getting much more money. What else can you do for us? And that opened up a world of doors with digital marketing. I wanted to do, because there's so many virtual tour companies that, okay, cool, they do good work, it looks good, but so what? How does someone actually use this, and how do they actually make money doing this? That was the approach I took, especially during COVID.
I mean, one of the biggest problems marketing has always faced since it was ever invented was, how do you prove it's making a difference?
Yeah.
How do you show that it's actually making a difference? We have institutional marketing, right? We're selling a brand of cars, and every night we're on television or at sporting events. We're pushing. How do you create the demand? How do you create the pull in marketing? Push marketing, pull marketing. How do you bring that in? One of the beauties of digital marketing is you can get analytics. You can show this is the effect of what we're doing. And that's where I think it separates itself. Just institutional marketing, push kind of a thing. And I think it's really smart to do that, because that's what people want, right? I mean, you're here to solve a problem. You're here to solve a marketing problem. Can you prove that you've solved marketing problems in the past? Yeah. Can you show me that? So I absolutely agree. Let me ask you this question. Since you mentioned this, how has training in jujitsu or reading self-improvement books influenced the way you show up as a business leader?
It's a great question. I don't think I've been asked that before. Well, outside of a lot of physical injuries with jiu-jitsu, I would say Joe Rogan is a big guy. I got into martial arts kind of from him. He describes jiu-jitsu very well. If I'm remembering it correctly, he says something along the lines of, jiu-jitsu is an instrument that someone can use with physical dire consequences while playing human chess and human problem solving. And it's so well said, because you're in a high stress environment and you need to solve a problem. You need to figure out what's going on. And I feel like the ability with jiu-jitsu and just the overall training. Because when you're first starting out, you're doing basic fundamentals. You're not going out and rolling per se, but it's like anything in business or anything in life. If you're learning how to ride a bike, you're going to do training wheels for a little bit and you're going to take them off and then maybe even put them back on again. If you're me, it really depends on what you're doing. But the biggest thing I really found out from jiu-jitsu was learning how to solve problems, because you're in a high stress environment. In business, sometimes there's very high stress situations and you need to be quick. You need to be fast. You need to figure out a problem. If you don't, you're toast. You can get fired from a client. Employee could leave. Like, you need to figure these things out. That was the key fundamental thing from jiu-jitsu. And I think with books as well, is maybe not that much of a stressful environment. To me, it's quite peaceful, but you learn all these different tips and tactics and you can actually experiment those things in business. So you can see, hey, this book I read, does this work? I read this other book, does this tactic work? And you get to kind of experiment a little bit more. And it's just really knowledge at the end of the day, whether it's jiu-jitsu or whether it's reading books. You get an understanding of the knowledge and you want to apply it yourself, because some people, there's so much knowledge out there and it's like, hey, there's different personalities. So maybe some knowledge doesn't apply to one personality, but to another personality it might apply. So that's a beautiful thing. We're able to push and pull these different mechanisms and we ultimately get the ROI that we want, not just for our clients, but also for our employees too. How do we have them love working with us and make the most amount of money? I mean, for our clients, how do we have them continue having an engagement, but love working with us and see an ROI? So jiu-jitsu has been a great motivator of that, man. It's one of those things where a lot of people do it for the physical, but I truly did it for the mental side of things. I wanted to get out of my own way. And especially when my dad was in the canary cage, I needed an outlet and something to not think about other than him being incarcerated. It ended up being one of the foundations of my life, quite frankly.
Yeah, you can also say jiu-jitsu, in many respects, is a learn by doing trade. You're going to get slapped up a little bit if you make a mistake, but that's part of it. And I think we have to do more of that. I'm a big learn by doing guy. I often use golf as an example. If you were given a chance to play in a pro-am tournament, what would you choose if I gave you two choices? One is I'm going to send you books and videos done by the greatest golfers that ever lived, and you get a chance to look at all that stuff. The second choice is 2 rounds a week for 4 weeks with Scotty Scheffler.
The latter.
And why is that? Why? Here's all the information you need about the game, the inner game of golf. But being on the links with Scotty Scheffler, for example, is a whole different way of coming and learning with someone there teaching you step by step, the execution pieces I mentioned earlier. So I can understand completely how jiu-jitsu can play into that mindset. And that's it. It's more a mindset than it is, sure, physical, obviously, but it's more a mindset. So I appreciate that. We're getting close to the end, and I would like to ask you this question, and that is simply this. Search engine optimization. Let's talk about that just for a second. Give me and my listeners 3 ideas in terms of where you see it going in the next 5 years. What stands out to you in terms of how to optimize search engine optimization in the next 3 to 5 years?
It's great.
Without giving us any state secrets, of course. But go ahead.
I'll give them out left and right, John. I don't hold anything back. The first one I would say is you got to have good SEO. How does that happen? For me, I can just tell from my experience, what I did was I went through and really optimized my local citations and my local SEO. So what does that mean? The local citations and backlinks, that's your Google business profile of the world, your Yelps, your Glassdoor. People would, Glassdoor and Yelp. But they're very important citations, because what ChatGPT does is they're going to find a bunch of reviews from multiple outlets, and you got to have other reviews just from outside of the Google business profile, which I'll touch on in a second. If you're a general contractor, you need to have a Craigslist, an Angie's List. You need to have perhaps a Thumbtack. So you need to have good SEO. You need to be able to be found. One of the easiest ways to do that is if you're going on ChatGPT and you're typing in John's Plumbing, to use that example, right? You need to make sure that you are having strong reviews on Google, you have really good local citations and backlinks built. Those two things are going to be imperative to actually ranking locally on Google. So that's number one. The second thing is just having an optimized Google business profile. So I think a lot of people nowadays, they kind of have one, they just create one and then they let it sit. But you got to post on there. You got to post 3 times a week. You need to get, in my opinion, try to get as many as 5 reviews per week. Try to add in 5 photos as well to the Google business profile, because Google wants to see activity. That's ultimately how you get higher on the Google local SEO side of things. And then the third thing I'll say is you want to make sure you're constantly making new website pages and auditing the old website pages you have. So on-page SEO and off-page SEO. So on-page SEO is the stuff, the front-end stuff. So changing photos and copy. And then off-page SEO is more technical, going into the code, the header, the title tags, the metadata, all that needs to be optimized as well. I'd be surprised if you're not seeing any results on your Google profile. One of the best ways to learn how to do this is just by doing, and making mistakes and being humble, but knowing that skill, because once you learn how to fish, you can teach other people to fish. So, hey, maybe you have an intern, once you can tell them exactly what to do, and you can focus more on the sales and marketing stuff and hop on more podcasts. Hey, kind of like what I did. It's one of those things where being able to learn the actual skill and then transfer it and delegate it to a team member is invaluable. If you need to rank higher on Google, if you want to rank higher on Google, do that. Go on ChatGPT, go on Google, go on YouTube, find all these tutorials and put it to use. Don't just sit on it and, this is going to change overnight. No, you got to put it into action. Do the actual things that these videos are talking about. You're going to make mistakes, but that's part of the game.
Yeah, but it reminds me of starting a podcast. I knew nothing, 0. And you just wade through it, wade into it and wade through it. I started with solo podcasts like 3 years ago. Then there was a long absence. What am I going to do now? Then I realized maybe you should have some guests. Let's talk about guests. Now it's, for me, a matter of fact, things I'm doing all the time, and I enjoy it. I've learned so much from my guests. I mean, it's changed me dramatically. So I absolutely agree. You got to get in it. You got to do it. I don't know if this statistic or not, but I'll give you this statistic. Comes from ChatGPT, by the way. 90% of all people who start podcasts don't make it past episode 3. And 90% of the remaining people don't make it past episode 20. So you got to keep at it. You got to keep putting good information out. You got to have great guests like yourself to come on and talk about a wide variety of things. At the same time, you stay in your lane, in the sense that you can't get so far afield. I can't talk about gardening on the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. That's way off in some other direction. And there are guests that have been wonderful. They've sent me, I'd like to be on your podcast. And I'll say, no, you're not my lane. I'm sorry. It's not my space. But here's someone I know you may want to contact. And I put people in contact with other folks who have podcasts, and hopefully it works out for them. I agree completely. And I appreciate those 3 comments. They make so much sense to me. Anyway, Sean, let me tell you, it's been great conversation having you here this morning. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be on the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. I wish you, Momentum360, all the success in the future. Thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you.